Did you get your pass okay? It was all there for you. Hello. Oh, of course.
To Joe.
I was impeccably left-brain, to an extent that now embarrasses me.
Graham Linehan is one of the most successful comedy writers of his generation, writing and directing some of the most beloved sitcoms of the 90s and 2000s. With shows like Father Ted, Black Books and The IT Crowd, he was a central figure in what is now considered a golden age of TV comedy. And yet, he can no longer work in the industry in which he was so revered, and now inspires the most intense online hatred.
Graham Linehan is a vile bigot in every sense of the term.
He's a massive transphobe and is just dedicating his time to that.
This dude is a transphobic piece of shit.
In June 2020, Linehan came to Rowling's defense after she made comments that were transphobic, because of course he did.
Why would anyone want to tarnish their own brand by aligning themselves with someone who's just so incredibly toxic on the internet?
All this because he's a vocal opponent of gender ideology and the threat that it poses to women's spaces, gay rights and children's safety. Much of the mainstream media is in denial about his cancellation.
You read a lot of articles in papers by people complaining about cancel culture, and you think, in what world are you cancelled? I'm reading your article in a newspaper.
Or claim that he brought it on himself.
Do you accept, hands up, you've gone too far in some respects? You've said things that you would want to take back?
No, not one thing.
But the tide is beginning to turn. Gender-critical voices like his are finally getting a hearing, and Graham is dipping his toe again into writing and comedy. Has Graham Linehan been vindicated? Spike went to meet him to find out more. My name is Tom Slater. I'm the editor of Spiked, a magazine dedicated to free speech, challenging received wisdom, and fighting cancel culture. And among the most high-profile targets of cancel culture today is comedy writer Graham Linehan. To learn more about how Graham made and lost his career in comedy, I met him at his flat in southeast London.
Hello. How are you doing? Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Oh. Shoes off or shoes on?
Shoes on is fine.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah.
After watching a few comedy sketches, he still likes to keep up to date, I asked Graham where it all began.
How did you get started? I know that before you were a music journalist. When did you start moving into comedy?
Well, music journalism was the kind of was the way in, I guess, because I found I was able to make people laugh through in my reviews and columns that I wrote. There were two people in my office who were very funny. One of them was Arthur Matthews, who I ended up writing Father Ted with. I was very hero worshipping of Arthur. He was 9 years older than me. And I did think he was the funniest person I'd ever met. And when I got to the UK, where I was still doing music journalism, and still trying to make people laugh through that, but finding it a little bit more difficult, I wrote to Arthur and said, do you want to come over and just give it a go? Give comedy writing a go, see if we can do it. It went from sketches to agent to sitcoms. Our first one wasn't a success, but it was a really useful learning experience, and it made us kind of realize how seriously we had to take it. It made Father Ted like 1,000 times better.
What was it about that idea, that premise, that you think really helped it take off?
First is that the premise was so good. Like priests who were so bad that they've been moved to the worst parish in the world is a really clear premise. You basically explain it once and you're done. The other thing was that almost by accident, we'd created a family, Like you could say that Father Ted is a family sitcom. There's the father, Ted, mother, Mrs. Doyle, kid in Dougal, and grandfather in Father Jack, and audiences love seeing their families reflected, you know, or at least they did at the time. I'm not sure if that would be true now because everyone's so atomized.
And so the IT crowd was very much you breaking out on your own or doing something very much on your own. What was different about that, I suppose, other than the obvious?
Well, I'm very proud of the IT crowd, and if I could do it again, I would just make sure that the actors were much more a part of it, because it's really like having a giant brain that sees the story through their characters' eyes.
At what point do you find yourself being drawn into this gender debate?
I think one of the things I noticed was that trans women are women was being said, and I realized that trans women didn't mean transsexuals anymore. So they were saying men are women. People sometimes say to me, why this subject of all subjects? And I just cannot even understand why they would ask a question. Because my answer is always the same. Don't you have any women in your life? Don't you care about them? Like, if your mum wants a female carer, don't you think she should have one? You know?
At what point did you notice people within your industry starting to...
Just kept getting jobs and they kept getting taken away, you know? I was asked to write something to accompany Peter Shaffer's amazing farce, black comedy, that was immediately taken away by the Peter Shaffer estate. Then there was a job teaching comedy in Australia. That was going to be a big thing. That was taken away. A job where I was supposed to work with Steve Martin was immediately taken away, almost as soon as I sent the email saying I accept. So eventually I kind of realized, all right, well, this is my life now. So I kind of started taking the journalism aspect more seriously, and now my income only comes from my blog, which is in which I kind of cover all this stuff. You know, I still cannot quite believe, though, that it's got this far. It's like not a single person stood up for me, not Arthur, you know, not Chris Morris, you know, Armando Iannucci, who's Scottish, who should be on top of all this stuff, considering some of the horrific things that have happened in Scotland to do with this. None of them. They all just kind of, they're dead silent on it. And what it allowed was for me to be kind of beaten up in the dark for about 6 years while I wrote this fucking book. You know what I mean? I mean, like, I should not have had to write a book to show people what had happened to me.
If you go on your Wikipedia page right now, it'll say Graham Linehan is anti-trans, or is an anti-trans campaigner. What do you do with that particular accusation? How do you respond to it?
First of all, the fact that my position is shared by various trans-identified people, like Debbie Hayton, Karina Cohn, Aaron Tremble, I think his name is, bunch of, you know, Book Angel. You know, GC views are not only held by non-trans people. There's lots of GC trans people. I saw a newspaper article that described me as trans skeptic. And that is exactly how I would describe myself. Like, I believe, like, basically I think that trans now means a belief that there's more than two sexes, that some people are born into the wrong body, that these things are literally true, you know, and that if you transition, you literally become the opposite sex. None of this is true. This is all bollocks. And the result of not being trans skeptic, the result of not fighting this stuff, is that there's a whole generation of gay and gender non-conforming kids who have been sterilized and mutilated by this movement, and who will spend the rest of their lives in hospitals, whose lives will be shortened because of the effects of cross-sex hormones. And yeah, I can't get anyone to care, you know?
Graham has just published a memoir, Tough Crowd, telling the story of his comedy career and his battle with gender ideology. In the pre-Christmas rush, Graham was summoned to his publisher to sign more copies of his book.
This is a nightmare for me because, like, my school teachers hated my guts, and as punishment, he used to make me write out pages and pages of copy by hand. And over time, I just completely lost my handwriting.
What was he making you write out? Not like I am a little shit over and over again or something like that, or whatever it might be.
No, although it would have been appropriate.
The responses to the book from what, you know, the reviews, but also just readers. What's been your measure of that?
Great, like the Amazon reviews are you know, massively positive. Got an incredible review in the Express where he just completely nailed what I was trying to do and why the book exists, you know. And it sort of sorted me out for a week being compared to Emile Zola. John Boyne said something nice about it.
I read on Pink News that no one had bought it.
Yeah.
And obviously I trust them implicitly, so...
Well, you know, a couple of days before that article came out, I signed 3,500 books.
And how many did they claim you'd shifted? Like
350 or something.
So someone's lying.
Yeah, we just threw those in a landfill.
There's a great picture on the back of... so is this your 3 BAFTAs and your Emmy?
It's actually 5 BAFTAs.
Oh, sorry. Was there ever a part of you that thought you would be afforded more of a hearing on this issue, on the gender issue?
No, that's very true. I thought people would say, "Oh, hang on, he wrote Father Ted and the IT Crowd and Black Books and all successful shows. So he's not like doing this for recreational reasons. He's not. He hasn't shown any evidence of bigotry in the past. So we'll hear him out." But not a bit of it. Not a bit of it.
And was there anyone who did speak out for you? I mean, I see Jonathan Ross and Richard Ayoade here.
Yeah, like Jonathan's always been incredibly sympathetic. One of the few people who helped nearly keep my marriage together. You know, he was incredibly kind. He's been incredibly kind all through this. Richard, I didn't know. I thought it could go either way. So we just sent him a copy and said, "Look, if you want to give a quote for this, you can, but no worries if you don't. Totally understand." And he came through. And James Dreyfus is the only other celeb who stood with me, and as a result, he hasn't worked for 6 years.
And I see Richard Ayoade. I mean, people tried to go for him off just for this quote, I believe.
Yeah,
got put through the ring.
And they quickly stopped that when they realised it was bringing too much attention to the book. You know.
Yeah.
They realised they were in danger of being Ted and Dougal outside the cinema with the posters. You know?
Careful now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Do you ever sometimes look back on all the flack you've gotten for taking up this issue and think maybe I shouldn't have? Wouldn't it be better if I'd have just left it?
Well, it would definitely be better if I just left it, but I wouldn't have been able to live with myself. You know, I mean, I don't know how my old colleagues can. I don't, especially the ones who have daughters. I just don't know how they can look themselves in the mirror.
Oh, amazing!
Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much.
The biscuits might help, actually.
So, what's your sense, Dan, of the how things have been going?
We're a small independent, and for us it's been amazing. And certainly, you know, I think this book's had quite a lot of coverage, and continues to get so. It made the Sunday Times best-selling list, and it just hasn't had the same exposure. So, why is that? I don't know.
I think we could probably guess.
We certainly were advised. In fact, a couple of people who I used to work with decided they didn't want to carry on working with us.
Oh, really?
I'm a big believer in freedom of speech, and regardless about the gender issue, I think on a whole variety of points, it's really important that dialogue and debate happen.
I couldn't agree more. Would you write another book, Graham? Have you had enough for the moment?
No, I would. The only thing I would not look forward to another session of signing 3,500 of them. That, no offence to anyone who's got a signed book, but signing 3,500 books was wild. Like, this is nothing. This is nothing. I was slept among piles of them. I could have been killed by copies of my own book. Yeah. Wouldn't that have been a funny headline? Graham Linehan killed after, like the photograph of all the books on my body.
On a wet winter evening, Graham invited us to a free speech comedy night called Comedy Unleashed. He has been trying his hand at stand-up and has performed at the club a few times before. At the Edinburgh Fringe Festival this year, a Comedy Unleashed showcase was cancelled by not one but two venues after Graham was revealed to be the headliner. In the end, they were forced to do the show outside the Scottish Parliament. Graham was supposed to do a surprise appearance tonight, but he tells me he is no longer feeling it. So Graham, we're going to the Backyard Comedy Club in Bethnal Green to Comedy Unleashed, which is a free speech comedy night. You've performed there before. Are you going to perform tonight, or?
Not going to perform tonight. I feel terrible, and I kind of felt that if usually I try and at least have 3 or 4 pieces of material, and tonight I've only got 1, and I don't want to just trot through the stuff that's worked before, because I have a feeling there's a lot of return customers in there, and I don't want to just go through greatest hits, even though it's so funny to call it that, because I've only performed there like 5 times, And
stand-up is relatively new for you.
Yeah, I've never fancied it. I think that the ability or the craft of stand-up is so precious, and it's also very much a young man's game, that I don't even want to look like I'm even trying to reach it. For me, it's just like, got a few jokes, I'm not good at it, get up and rely on my unbelievable charm. I've been kind of doing publicity for the book, and it's been weirdly stressful.
How so?
Well, I was looking forward to it originally, because I want to talk about these issues. I want to explain to people what's going on, but it's always framed like a kind of a witch trial.
Neither of us want to make this about poor Graham Linehan and so on, but what toll has taking up this battle taken for you?
Well, everything really. Like my big my pension was the Father Ted musical, which I worked on for 2 or 3 years. And Hat-Trick just basically stole my kind of being possibly paid off for the amount of times people have watched that show and love it. We weren't doing a cheap rip-off.
Yeah.
We had some amazing songs from Neil Hannon. I structured it along the lines of an American musical, the producers, we were fastidious, and
it was going to be kind of like the final episode or the finale everyone was deprived of because of Dermot Morgan.
Because Dermot died, yes, and we actually were going to call it the final episode, Father Ted, the final episode,
Obviously Father Ted, which is so well beloved, the IT crowd, obviously you're very much your baby, but even the other things you worked on, Brass Eye and all the sketch shows and so on, that was such many people look on as a kind of golden era for comedy. And obviously it's a slightly trite point, I suppose, but there is this sense that it's not necessarily that you wouldn't get away with that kind of stuff now, but the creativity isn't there because there are so many tripwires and because everyone's expected to toe the party line, as it were.
Well, apparently Seinfeld and Chris Rock, people like that, they won't do colleges anymore. They've just stopped. They just say you can't. The audiences, you can't. They're offended by everything. And they're like arguing with the comedians on stage. So basically, the whole world for these people becomes a kind of struggle session.
And do you think it does come down to cowardice?
Yeah, the first man through the door gets the bullet, as a friend of mine once said. I've tangled in this fight with some of the most eccentric. It's like Batman villains, and they fucking. It's like, how is anyone taking these lunatics seriously?
When people say that cancel culture doesn't exist, as they often want to do you think they believe that?
No, I think they're ashamed of it, which is why they pretend it doesn't exist. They know it's real, and they know that they currently are the beneficiaries of it. Oh, is this it?
Yeah, well.
Oh, okay.
And we'll grab the stuff out the boot. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Why are you feeling so
not up for it this evening?
I had a curry last night, and my 55-year-old body decided to finally say, I'm not doing that anymore. You know, so I've just spent the day in agony. Isn't that great? That's a brilliant thing for people to know.
That's what we do. Should we go in?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
You ever seen a police cat? You ever seen a cat out there solving crimes? There's dogs in the airport.
Come have a huge round of applause! No! I'm ready for the final act in this section! We've been here before, bitches, so we'll try that again for the last time, otherwise the show is being fucking pulled, okay? I'm ready for the final act in this section! A huge round of applause, Mr. Graham Linehan! Seem to have frightened him away. Come on, boys and girls, if you cheer.
But I think the worst thing about having consciousness as a cow would be hearing about global warming. Because you know that would spread like wildfire around the cows. We can't what? What can't we do? What? We can't what? And all the right-wing cows would be like, I'm gonna do it anyway. And all the left-wing cows be wearing little ass masks. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time.
What made you go up? There was a mishap.
Yeah, they just announced me. They thought I was on. So they announced me, and I had to go. I got to cheer. You can't say, no, I'm not going up if people are cheering because of you. So, yeah, it was great. It was great. I'm so surprised at how much fun I had. I must just keep doing it. You know, it's like, it's just lovely. It's lovely, you know. I was able to even make fun of my inability to do physical comedy. So I was delighted, you know. So I had like 1 or 2 more routines at my fingertips. So I must work on that. I'll try and have a few standbys that I can always do when there's a surprise like that, you know.
Should we get you a drink?
Yeah, let's go in for one more, yeah.
Watching Graham bring the house down, I couldn't help but feel like change is in the air. He has been mercilessly punished for daring to defy the groupthink of the comedy industry. His incredible gift for making people laugh wasn't enough to spare him from cancellation. But in the end, his views on gender are only really outrageous to a privileged, intolerant few. There is a new hunger among ordinary people for daring, dissenting voices like his, and the gender-critical movement he belongs to is silenced no more. Perhaps Graham Linehan really will have the last laugh, and here's hoping his best work is still in front of him.